Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Supercharge Efficiency with RPA at Power Automate. I am Elisa, today's host. Thank you all for joining. I do have just a few housekeeping items to go over before we get started. All lines have been muted to reduce background noise. If you experience any technical difficulties, please let us know by using the chat panel below. We will be taking questions throughout the presentation and will answer them during the last 10 to 15 minutes of today's webinar. After today's event, you'll be receiving an email with the slides from today's presentation and the recording. At LBMC Technology Solutions, our aim is to be your team for everything tech. If you think of a technology challenge or need, please drop it in the chat, the Q&A, or send us an email at info@lbmctech.com. We will be with you and getting started in just a few more minutes. Hello again, and please help me welcome our presenters for today's webinar, Jason Barnes and Landon Wheeler. Jason has been with LBMC Tech Solutions for more than 8 years now and has more than 22 years of experience in technology, specializing in CRM, Microsoft Power Platform, as well as solutions consulting and architecture. Landon joined LBMC Tech Solutions this year and brings more than 7 years of expertise in no-code, low-code, and pro-code solutions, specializing in Power Automate, Microsoft Power Platform, and Power BI. Now, Jason, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Again, we appreciate all of you joining us this morning. Today, I'd like to talk about a technology that I think is really becoming the easiest and really fastest way to help you and your organizations become more productive and definitely more efficient. Because we have so many clients coming to us and wanting to know about how to automate certain parts or aspects of their business, we thought it'd be best to put this session together today to help you all become more familiar with Microsoft's Power Platform and the latest Robotic Process Automation, or RPA, technology that has become available. With RPA, in my opinion, it's really easier than ever to automate those like routine and recurring or repetitive tasks that we all deal with on some level by week. So it's a very common thing. Specifically, our goal today is to provide you with a few takeaways, of course, that will help you understand what this new RPA technology really is, how it works and how it can help you. So we're looking to unlock this new cheat code, to borrow my son's expression, unlock that cheat code, right? And begin to leverage it to make, our businesses run more efficiently. Specifically, we're going to work on a definition of what is robotic process automation, Jason. We're going to certainly cover that. We'll talk about how the RPA technology can help our organizations work more efficiently and ultimately create or increase our productivity. We'll go through some common RPA automation use cases. And then, of course, wouldn't be complete without a little demonstration. So Landon has been nice enough to prepare a demo for us that we'll look at here in just a little bit. So when clients reach out to us, usually in regards to automation or our workflow automation, and we start talking about RPA, their needs usually fall under one of three categories. Number one, obviously, all businesses try to be more efficient. They're finding ways to promote operational efficiency. They're looking to obviously be more productive. So they're trying to find ways to increase productivity and uptime. That's another thing that a lot of times, businesses struggle with is how am I more productive? How do I increase my uptime or my availability to provide services or solutions or products or assist clients, right? So uptime is a big driver. And then, of course, we never want to be working with bad data or, end up in situations where we can't rely on our system to provide us with accurate information. So any chance we have to improve accuracy and consistency in our processes is certainly a benefit. So Deloitte conducted a study, and what they found is that businesses that are utilizing technology such as RPA to automate those, like I said earlier, those real repetitive or recurring routine administrative tasks, they experience somewhere between like a 20 and 30% reduction in their operational expenses and costs. And at the same time, they're going to be gaining that efficiency. They're reducing the manual processing time and potential errors. And then they increase that uptime, like I was mentioning a moment ago. So definitely an interesting study there. But what I'd like to do though, is I'd like to break down the benefits of RPA in a little more detail. So let's talk about efficiency. RPA automates, again, those repetitive rule-based tasks. I'm adding that phrase and we'll talk a little bit about it later. Those rule-based tasks that were previously just done manually. And what that does, it leads to faster sort of execution of these tasks. It reduces the amount of time, the processing time, the handling time, and it helps them overall to streamline that whole workflow. So as a result, as you can imagine, the business is going to become more efficient in doing that. Of course, cost savings, as we automate those sort of routine, mundane tasks. RPA is going to be reducing the need for additional labor or expensive labor, which could obviously lead to some cost savings there. It's going to minimize errors and those associated costs. And of course, it allows the employees that are already there to focus on more strategic and, you might say, more value added activities or actions. Productivity, of course. So in my opinion, obviously increasing productivity is key. Now, RPA can handle those repetitive tasks faster than people. I know some people are like, no, it can't. Yes, it can. RPA can handle those repetitive tasks a lot faster than a human being. And like I said earlier, when it comes to uptime, these RPA bots can operate 24/7, right? They don't need a break. They don't need lunch. They don't take vacations. They can run 24/7 without a break. So that obviously can lead to some big gains in productivity as well. And then one other aspect about RPA that kind of goes sometimes unnoticed is that the reduction in our, what I call IT workload, or our business analyst IT workload, because RPA doesn't require any coding. At least the solution that I want to be talking about today in a little bit doesn't require any coding. So there's no need for a developer. The RPA tools and methods that we use or that would be used don't disturb the underlying software. They just interact with those applications and software at the user interface level. They don't actually interact with the underlying data itself, the database. They don't get to that level. They're just working through the same UI you're used to. So you think of it as controlling your mouse and keyboard. So we'll talk more about that sort of process there and how that really works in here in a little bit. But one other point to bring up is that, like I said earlier, improving our accuracy and our consistency in our processes and these steps is vital. So these RPA bots can execute these tasks with a higher level of precision. It's much higher level of precision than a human being. And they can follow what you might call like predefined actions or rules without deviation. So it's like, it does it this way. And if for example, it runs into an occurrence that it doesn't meet the rules, then it will create like an exception report and let you know what the exception was. So this obviously reduces the risk of errors that can frequently occur in manual processing, right? So definitely ensures a more consistent output when you're able to rely on that RPA bot to do that work. And then of course, consistency is crucial for maintaining quality and compliance, you might say, in various business processes, and certainly being able to meet certain industry standards, for example. So that's definitely a win. As you can see, the benefits make RPA a really powerful tool for enhancing this overall operational efficiency, productivity, and again, uptime. And since RPA can really be applied to just about any sort of repetitive or routine task or process, it really is going to provide a huge range of possible use cases. So we're going to talk about those here in just a little bit, some use case examples. But before that, I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about its usage. So right now, this chart that I have up is showing you RPA usage by industry. The data is highlighting the strong usage of RPA in industries where, if you think about it, it'll have high volume, a lot of repetitive tasks. Of course, where automation has always been proven to be really highly effective, right? So you can see the levels of RPA adoption across all the different sectors. And as you can imagine, banking and financial services really leading the way. That's probably due to all of the documentation, the reviews, and the number of processing steps and coordination that is involved in those sectors. So that's likely a highly repetitive task, which is why RPA has been such a success there. And then, of course, healthcare being another big one, manufacturing. So we're going to talk again here in a little bit about some example use cases in those industries. But before we really dive into that, though, I'd like to ask all of you what might be motivating you to look toward automation technologies like this robotic process automation, this RPA technology. I'd like to get an idea of really what might be motivating you there. Alyssa, do we have our first poll question?
Yes, we do. Let me pull that up for us here. So, our first question is, what is motivating you to learn more about robotic process automation? The need to operate more efficiently, the need to ensure critical tasks or processes are completed consistently and timely, the need to automate manually intensive and repetitive tasks, all of the above.
All right, we'll give it a couple more seconds. All right. So I think everybody's probably had a chance there. There's a few responses. As I expected, all of the above, right? We're trying to be more efficient. We want to knock out those critical tasks and be more productive all in one. So I get it. I figured that would be the response. All right. So before we start diving into talking about the RPA technology itself, I think we first need to really give it a good definition, right? So you're probably saying this all sounds great, Jason. It's really intriguing, but really, what is robotic process automation? What's the actual technology behind it? So, I think a good definition is that RPA is a technology that uses basically what we call software bots or robots to automate repetitive, what we would say is rule-based tasks. In other words, there's a certain criteria, certain parameters that go into that task. That's what I mean by rule-based. There are certain parameters there and processes that are typically performed by human beings, right? By people. So these bots, as we call them, they're going to interact with any of your systems, your applications, just like any of us would, any human would, and they'll be executing those tasks with, again, a high level of precision and efficiency. So again, I think it helps to think about this like when maybe tech support remotes into your desktop and they start controlling your cursor and they can work directly in your machine. The experience can be somewhat similar to that with RPA, can be similar to that, depending on really what type of bot is being used, right? In other words, what type of RPA bot would we be using to meet the automation needs, right? So let's talk about that next. Let's talk about what are the different types of RPA bots. So there are essentially two types of RPA bots, attended and unattended. So the primary difference between attended and unattended bots, when we talk RPA, is really how they operate and the level of human intervention, like human involvement, right? Is there a person that's needing to start a process or comment or take an action in the middle of a process? So keep that in mind. We're talking about situations where a user can interact with the bot as it's doing its job, or it can be unattended. So just to explain a little further, attended bots, they're going to require that human interaction, as I was saying. So attended bots kind of work alongside people or human users, and they require some level of human interaction to either initiate the process or the task or intervene at some point during it's like the execution of the task by the bot. So they're needed, or humans are still like interacting during the process. And they are typically used for like front office tasks you might think of as maybe customer service, anywhere where you have these tasks that are repetitive, but they do sometimes, require or will require some real time decision making. And that's where a human being comes in. So like call center support, data entry, and of course, like customer onboarding processes, a lot of accounting processes where you have to make a decision along the way. So they can certainly accommodate that. But that's called an attended bot. So an unattended bot is basically the opposite. It's like an autonomous bot, right? So an unattended bot can operate independently without any human intervention, right? Once they're set up and scheduled, they just go. So they're really ideal for back office tasks that don't require that sort of real time human interaction. They can run on a scheduled basis, or maybe they're triggered by certain events in the operation and then they just run and do their thing. Great examples of that would be like invoice processing, data syncs, payroll processing, inventory management, pricing updates are a very common example where you have pricing updates based on market changes or maybe manufacturer pricing changes. So those are excellent examples. So just to sum it up is attended bots require human interaction, right? They're going to work in real time with the user and they're going to be needing that a human or a person to make some decisions in the process. An unattended bot, again, autonomous, right? They can just be scheduled, they can be event triggered, and they're really going to be best for those high volume, like highly repetitive tasks that really just don't require human intervention or involvement as they run. Both of these bots are going to be used, and they're really going to be able to help enhance efficiency and productivity in the business, but they're going to be applied in different scenarios, really just based on the level of human interaction. So now I like to focus on specific tools that make this RPA magic possible, right? So Microsoft really is at the forefront of RPA technology, and it's been exciting as a partner to see everything they're doing with it. It's like the range and the capability is just amazing. Over the last several years, what I've noticed and my team's noticed is they continue to expand on their RPA capabilities. And they really just have done such a good job with that, incorporating it into Microsoft Power Platform. And now what they call their Power Automate RPA desktop tool, in my opinion, it's become that industry, that go-to low code, no code RPA tool of choice, you might say. So for those of you who are still not familiar with Microsoft Power Platform, I want to make sure we talked about it, but just keep everyone on the same page. But we really simply put, Power Platform, excuse me, it's a low code productivity platform. I want you to think of it as a collection of tools. All right. And these tools are going to allow a business to do lots of different things. They can create their own custom applications. They can create websites and like portals and member experiences. They can automate a business process like we've been talking about. And then of course they can create custom reports and dashboards, for example. So some of you, in fact, might already be familiar with Power BI, which is the business intelligence reporting tool in Power Platform. But today we're really going to focus on what I consider the sort of the core of the platform, and that's Power Automate, right? Specifically, we're going to focus on Power Automate's RPA desktop tool. And one thing to note is you'll notice a trend in our industry these days is that anytime we're talking about a low code, no code solution or service, we're typically going to refer to it as a tool, right? Because it's exactly that. These are tools that, sometimes, in many cases, non-technical people use these tools, right? You don't have to be a developer or an IT person to do this. We can help provide training. We offer advisory programs that can help business analysts and folks and just have an aptitude for this sort of stuff. We can get them ramped up to where they can use a lot of these tools themselves, including RPA desktop. Again, just to help with definitions, I like to make sure everybody's on the same page with what these things are. RPA desktop is actually part of Power Automate, which is, of course, a Power Platform tool, like I said, and it's obviously meant to automate business processes and tasks. But mainly with Power Automate, it's meant to connect to different applications, different online services and platforms. Users can connect their ERP or their accounting system with other business systems, with maybe Microsoft 365 or Dynamics 365, like CRM, or maybe they have a custom Power App, for example. But they can connect to thousands. There's just thousands of different applications, both cloud and on premise. We can use Power Automate to drive automation between all these various things. Be very powerful. With Power Automate, I draw a distinction here. So with Power Automate, we're really adding automation to two or more applications, or they're providing multiple applications, I guess you'd say, where the process involves multiple systems. But this is really not all it does, but that at its core is what it's meant to do, is what it's best at. So RPA desktop is an extension of that. It's going to allow for automation at the individual task level. It's really meant to support automation of tasks and process steps that may or may not require human intervention, like I said, or automation where systems connectivity and integration really impossible, right? For example, like third-party websites or portals, you a lot of times don't have access to connect to those directly. Maybe it's a larger company, organization, and they're like, no, you can just log in and get what you need, right? Or download a file or whatever. They don't have a way for you to connect through an integration, for example. Or maybe it's older legacy systems, right? That really lack the ability to connect with modern applications. We see that a lot, right? So RPA is a great solution for that problem. Continuing on with this concept of talking about our definitions, I want to define RPA desktop. So I think of and really like to define RPA desktop as a tool within Power Automate that's going to enable users to automate those repetitive desktop tasks and workflows that they will commonly run into. It allows for the creation of these, again, bots that we've been talking about that can mimic human actions, right? Such as mouse clicks, keyboard inputs. And of course, they're designed to streamline that operation across maybe one or more applications. And we can do it without the need for extensive coding, right? Again, this is a low code, no code solution, right? And the other thing to point out is that Power Automate and RPA Desktop, they can actually be used together to create automated processes really that can cover an even wider range of use cases than what like traditional RPA would do alone. So like you could be using RPA Desktop to execute and automate a local task. And part of that task is to connect to an external system and update three data points in a customer, like maybe a partner portal or in some kind of cloud-based application. So we could do that with Power Automate and RPA Desktop combined, which is pretty powerful stuff. But I will say, before we really move into talking about the example use cases for RPA, I really wanted to talk about some of the questions and some of the considerations you should be asking yourself before you start attempting to automate anything. So I thought this would be helpful to get everybody thinking along these lines. When is RPA a good fit, right? Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into this. So number one being complexity, right? So process complexity. So you have to think about, can you describe the specific steps involved in these tasks, right? So definition, can you define the process in a detailed way? And then also to think about how consistent are these tasks in terms of the steps and the rules applied. Does it vary much, or is it pretty much consistent every time the user would execute that task? It's the same steps every time, right? So process complexity is a big key. Volume and frequency is as well. So you got to ask yourself, how frequently do these tasks occur? Is it a daily, is it a weekly or monthly task? And then of course, what's the volume of the transactions we're talking about? How many activities are being handled in these tasks? So volume and frequency is a big key consideration as well. And then just what are some of the current challenges, right? So what challenges or like pain points do you currently really face with these manual processes besides just it taking time? And then you also, of course, want to really focus in on how much time is currently spent on these tasks by your team, right? So how big is the problem, shall we say? And then of course, you want to think about, okay, so what would be the impact and benefit to the organization, right? How would it impact the operation if the tasks that we're talking about were automated? And how would that improve the team's productivity and the accuracy, right? So these are obviously, we're really sure that the benefits outweigh the effort to put it in place. And of course, there's also considerations around systems and potentially integrations. What systems or applications are involved in these tasks, right? And then of course, are these systems that, like, we're talking about actual connectivity where we want to interact with the application at some point in the task or process, are they capable of integrating with an RPA solution? Which again, depending on what type of RPA bot we're creating, sometimes they don't have to actually connect anything. Sometimes it's literally just interacting with the interface. Now, some interfaces are cause a bigger challenge than others, depending on the types of like fields and the actual user. So, but 99% of the time, RPA would be able to interact with it just fine. And then the other would be thinking about compliance and security concerns. So, are there any regulatory or compliance requirements that need to be considered before you're automating these tasks, right? What security measures are in place to protect sensitive data? I'm talking about healthcare people right now. And so the core being, or the important piece there being to keep that data secure, obviously. These questions that I just rambled off there should help you determine really the suitability, if you will, of RPA for a particular process or a task or tasks. Help you understand the potential benefits and really identify any challenges that need to be addressed before you'd be implementing an RPA solution. And of course, LBMC, that's why we're here, is to help you sort through that. So a lot of the things that I just called off would be the questions that we would be talking about and discussing together when talking about trying to add some automation in the business. All right. So with that, let's really talk about how RPA can be applied across various industries or various departments and teams to really help streamline operations, of course, reduce costs, and then we've been saying increase efficiency and so forth. So I wanted to highlight some of these. There's a few, I probably won't touch on every single one, but I wanted to bring up some of the more common ones. So let's just start with invoice processing. I would say that this is probably one of the biggest areas that RPA can really help. So think about automating the extraction, the validation, and entry of the invoice data, maybe matching of invoices with purchase orders and processing payments, right? These are all just quick examples of how we can apply RPA to when we're processing invoices, right? So obviously all of those things would help you reduce maybe some of those manual data entry errors that you run into. Certainly would accelerate the payment cycle, right? And then I think just would improve the overall financial accuracy overall, right? So certainly a lot of benefit for our accounting teams when it comes to invoicing time. Customer service, automating those sort of like routine customer service tasks, like handling certain inquiries. You receive an inquiry and RPA can recognize what it is and immediately update your CRM or customer service software, immediately fire for a response to the customer, and then maybe escalate it if need be. These are all things that RPA automation can help with. Of course, updating customer information, for example, and really just the ability to help automate the processing of service requests. I think we've all at some point dealt with your chatbots when you're interacting with a business's customer service teams or departments. And this is slightly different than that. This is what would happen once a response was received and you're going through and processing that. But chatbots are also something that we do. It's not in the same discussion as like with RPA. It's a different thing. Obviously, by doing those things, business would be able to really enhance their customer satisfaction scores, for example. They're going to be providing a faster response. It's going to reduce the workload on the customer service folks and really just ensure that the service quality is consistent, right? I think in any organization that has a customer service team or operation, it's all about being consistent and providing a quality experience to a client, right? And anywhere we can automate that to ensure that it stays consistent and in the manner that we want as leaders, and how we want to take care of our clients, that's a win, right? That's certainly advantageous, you might say. Payroll. With payroll, I mean, there's so much that goes into processing payroll. So our HR teams, they've always, of course, got their hands full, but you could use RPA in the context of maybe thinking about automating payroll calculations, right? So you can, again, if it's a repetitive thing, there's a routine calculation that needs to occur for every line item in our payroll, it can do that, right? It can do commissions. We can tell it, hey, take these entries and apply this sort of commission logic to these entries and produce an outcome, right? Produce a document that I can then use to pay my sales team, for example, their commissions. Tax withholdings and maybe direct deposit distributions and notifications, all possible with RPA. And then, of course, some benefits to that would be obviously minimizing your errors in your payroll, being more timely with payroll payments, which all employees certainly appreciate. and just reducing that overall administrative workload. This is, again, just another benefit to incorporating RPA into all these various departments and teams in our organization. I wanted to cover a couple more here. Word processing. If any business that doesn't use some level of automation with order processing is probably missing a pretty substantial opportunity, because order entry and order processing, tracking of orders, managing inventory, updating inventory, in some cases, providing inventory checks, for example, inventory level checks or updates. There's lots, or maybe inventory fulfillment requests, these sorts of things that are maybe done by email now, or done by, let's hope nobody is like walking around with a stack of orders and putting on somebody's desk for them to go and start entering them or trying to fulfill them, for example. But if that exists, then we definitely want to talk. But we can bring in RPA to help streamline a lot of that and save time. So the faster you can get that order out, faster, and depending on your situation, the faster you might get paid. It just depends on your billing scenario there. And of course, that just again, in general, we're going to speed up fulfillment, again, reducing errors, and then improving our inventory management, of course. I promise healthcare, talk about healthcare as far as we can use RPA, for example, to automate some patient data capture or data entry, certainly like appointment scheduling. I've seen that be applied in real time. And I think it's really a neat use case for RPA. And then maybe claims processing, for example, if we're having to process claim, insurance claim. So that's certainly something that we can bring RPA to help out with. And then, of course, just in general, that's going to help with data consistency. It's going to speed up processing. And then the other thing I like about it is, again, we're getting back to that uptime, right? There's nothing more frustrating than trying to contact or communicate with a medical office and they're closed, right? They seem like they're always closed when you have a question or need an answer or need to try to reach them, schedule an appointment, that kind of thing. A bot can assist with that, right? And it's always working. It's never takes lunch, never takes a vacation. So you can use RPA there to improve that patient experience. All right. I also want to make sure we talk about data migration, data synchronization, you might say. So RPA can be used to handle and automate the transfer of information and data between systems, right? So maybe that's during an upgrade, or maybe it's by data migrations, or just overall data synchronizations. We can bring RPA in to help with that. And of course, that helps reduce the risk of data loss, improves consistency, and this really accelerates the ability to manage your data more efficiently, you might say. All right. So additional use cases and these are use cases for RPA that LBMC has actually assisted clients with. So these are really just true life examples. Automating the updating of manufacturer pricing, something that we've done not long ago for a client. The bot logs into a manufacturer partner or distributor portal, grabs the pricing, brings it down, updates 2 columns, and then imports it into their ERP and inventory system to update their pricing. It does it twice a week, which is pretty neat, right? No human intervention needed there. That was a real life example. Automating desktop applications that don't use web services. So this is what I was talking about before, where you got like maybe an older legacy system there's no way that it's going to have a web service. Maybe it's on-prem, and it's just not a modern application anymore. So we can still use RPA to interact with that, to do data entry, to update information, that kind of thing. That's a really good use case. We've had that situation occur. Extracting data from PDFs or automating PDF manipulation. This was a great example where there were statements that were being produced in a PDF, like in one big batch, like all in a row, like 200 something, just all in a row. We were able to use RPA desktop to essentially parse that long document and generate individual statements for each of the locations from that one long PDF. And then perhaps reconciling financial statements. We've had situations where we've helped there. Website server and website monitoring for content changes. So if this is something where an RPA bot can be trained to be triggered, again, back to an unattended bot. It can monitor the server or a website for some changes, right? And then maybe update another system or notify a user or something like that if there is a change. Deploying software. So our IT professionals that are on the session today, deploy software packages and maybe setting organizational settings. Again, something that's repetitive, where we're doing the same thing over and over again for maybe our user base. And then just speaking of users, managing our users themselves. Maybe they're migrating or maybe we're setting up security groups, things like this. We can just say, hey, RPA bot, I've got a new user. They're in this role, go. And it would immediately take and run through that workflow to update that user's information. And then things like connecting to a data source. This is another good example. Where we're connecting to a data source and generating documents to distribute them. Think of things like statements, invoices, acknowledgments. Very common. All right. So with that, Alyssa, do we have our second poll question?
Yes. So, based on what you've learned about RPA during today's webinar, how many repetitive, time consuming tasks do you think could potentially be automated in your operation? Looks like most of you answered 4 to 5.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty significant number. I'm sure if you get to think about it even longer, you would probably identify maybe even twice that number. Very common. So now let's move ahead here. And let's take a look at RPA Desktop in actions. Landon Wheeler is a Power Platform consultant on my team, and he was nice enough to prepare a brief demo for us today. So his demonstration is going to focus on some simple just manipulation of some financial data in a spreadsheet, right? It's pretty common to see clients exporting data out of their ERP or their other systems and really need to analyze it or parse it or in some way sort through it in that spreadsheet and then maybe distribute it to other departments or team members. This is a good example of a repetitive task that can be easily automated with RPA. So let's think about some numbers here. If we have a user that did this action twice a week for a year, and each time it takes them about 30 minutes, then if you think about that, 52 weeks, right? So they could save 52 hours, right? That's being efficient. Now maybe Jenny in accounting can actually take her vacation this year, right? We just saved 50 hours of her time this year. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at our recorded session here. So I'm going to push pause for a moment while I get that loaded up. All right. Should be good to go.
Hi, my name is Landon Wheeler. I'm from LBMC. I'm going to be walking through a simple automation process today just to sort through financial data based on a column and its value. So what I'm going ahead and done is I've actually pulled up our sample data here. This is just an Excel spreadsheet with some generic data in it. We've got a table that has the first row as names of columns. And right now there's only one worksheet. I'm going to be adding a new worksheet to this, title of Canada. I'm going to be taking all of these rows with the country of Canada, putting them into that worksheet, and then removing the country column because we don't need it in the worksheet that's titled for the country. I'm going to go ahead and move over to Power Automate so we can start doing that. The first thing I'm going to do is attach to the running Excel. Let's see that here. In this dropdown, I have the option to select the file that's open. Very simple. Next thing I'll do is read from the Excel worksheet. And this will get, in this case, I'm just going to get all available values. We do have some different options here. And as I noted before, the first line of the range contains column names. So I'm going to check that box here. Next thing I'll do is add our new worksheets. And the new worksheet's name is going Canada. I'll make the last worksheet. And we'll be setting the active worksheet. So this will actually change it to a different tab so I can write in it. I'll choose the worksheet by name here. Do it with the name of Canada. And now I can start going into the loop and condition that we're going to use to get the data from the main worksheet and separate it to the side. So the value I'm going to iterate is Excel data. And then I'll have a condition inside of there. It's going to check current item, see if it contains. Yeah. And then the next thing I'll need to do is get the, let's get first free row. We're just going to do column A. It's going to produce a variable first free row on column. This is what we're going to need to use to, whenever we write the data to the new worksheet, we're actually going to use this to go to the next free line instead of constantly overwriting the same data. And that write action is going to be write to Excel worksheets. Okay. The value that we're going to write is the current item. And then we're going to do it on a specified cell. So we'll start with column A. And the row we're going to use is going to be the first free row on that column. Next thing we'll do is delete the column. We're going to be deleting column B because that's our country column. And then after all of that happens, we can save the doc. Okay, perfect. So built in just 3-4 minutes there. Pretty simple kind of workflow of how this is going to work. So we're going to grab the instance of Excel that we have. In this case, it's our financial data. We're going to read the data, the values from those cells. We're going to add our new worksheet, the title of Canada. We're going to tell the program to switch over to that worksheet. And then we're going to start looping through each item with a condition, making sure that it contains the word Canada in it. And actually, I can make this a little better here. We can use the country column specifically. So then that way, it's not just checking the whole row, it's actually checking that specific column. And then we're going to get the first free row. This is the way that we're going to actually write to the individual cells, each bit of data. Then we have the right actions using that previous action to select the row. It's taking the current item data, writing it to that row. And then, deleting the column that we don't need for the country because it's in its own worksheet now. And saving the document. So I'm going to go ahead and run this and then we'll watch it. We'll watch it working here for just a moment so you can see the speed of it. And then if I switch over to Excel, we can see it's actually writing that data in. Right now, that country column still exists showing Canada, but in a moment it should disappear. So that means our flow is done. It did save it. And that's all we needed to do. We've seen how Power Automate for Desktop can simplify the process of having to write formulas and do all this other stuff to sort through Excel data. I just automated the process of segregating that data. I can do that for all the countries in there, just with a little more expansion of the actions. But I encourage you to explore more use cases and see how automation can benefit your workflows. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to quickly put my screen back around here. All right. And so just to add to what we just saw there, the RPA bot could have actually performed a number of steps or actions with that spreadsheet, right? So Landon did a great job. He just sort of showed a very quick, very basic example, but that bot could have generated the file itself, like gone out to this whatever system or whatever source, generated that file, analyzed it, parsed it, generated a summary, and then maybe it emails that summary to select departments or employees, maybe in the organization, right? So it could just as easily been a report generated out of a system as well. Maybe not Excel, maybe it's an actual report that we wanted to generate and distribute. The RPA bot could have generated multiple files, right? So maybe not just one, maybe you could have generated multiple files, analyzed them both, and generated a summary of the data that it analyzed in a new file and then distributed it, right? This is just a very basic example of RPA though. If you have a specific use case that you'd like for us to demo for you or discuss, obviously, please feel free to reach out. So, Elisa, I think we have one more poll question, I believe.
We sure do. So, poll question number 3: how much time do you think RPA would save you or your team each week? And the most popular answer was a few hours.
I think we left a few minutes for some questions that we have there.
Yes. So thank you, Jason and Landon, for your presentation. We will begin our Q&A live. If anyone has questions about anything that was shared today, but we don't get to your question today, please do feel free to reach out to us at info@lbmctech.com. It looked like Vicky had a question during Landon's presentation. Her question was, what if I wanted the header row to copy over as well?
We can certainly do that. It would just be another parameter, another setting in the bot when we go through to set it up. Certainly possible.
Jason. And the next question that we received is, how is RPA desktop licensed?
Yeah, great questions. A pretty common question. So with the Power Automate license, it really coincides with the Power Automate licensing, right? For those of you who are not familiar with Power Automate licensing, you can license Power Automate, what they call premium, which is basically it's premium, but it's really the first paid version because there is a free edition. The free edition does not offer any RPA features though. So Power Automate Premium is $15 a user a month, right? Anyone that would be interacting with that bot would need to have a Power Automate Premium license. $15 a user a month, I think is certainly reasonable. And that's for the attended bots. To get back what we talked about before, a Power Automate Premium, the $15 license gets you access to the attended bots. And then it's a different price structure if you need an unattended. So the unattended, it goes up to a per bot monthly fee. I think it starts like 100 or maybe it's 150 a month, I think, for an unattended bot. So we have to just discuss the requirements and needs there. And then we would determine if it would be attended or unattended. But in most cases, what we've been doing lately is a lot of the attended bots. And like I said, $15 user a month for those.
Thank you, Jason. We have one other question that's come in, and that question is, how long does it take to implement this?
Yeah. You saw just a moment ago, the interface and the tool itself is actually really easy to use. It's a low code, no code tool. And depending on the complexity of what it is we're really trying to do, he took 7 minutes for him to do what he just did in that basic example. So it really just depends on the complexity and what exactly we're trying to do. But we haven't really had any of these attended RPA type bots that have taken more than a day or two to do. Some of the more complex ones, maybe some days, weeks, that kind of thing. So not long at all to summarize that.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. That was all the questions we had. And it looks like we're close to time today. We hope this webinar on robotic process automation has been informative and valuable to everyone who joined us today. Keep an eye out for more webinars this coming year. Again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. If you have any further questions or need guidance on how to get started, our team is always available to support and assist you.